The new clear date feature in QuickBooks Online, it's tied to whenever you download bank transactions and then you reconcile the bank transactions with your QuickBooks transactions. And there are cases in which your original QuickBooks transaction is dated maybe a couple of months in the past or a couple of days in the past, but then the day that it clears the bank, it's a completely different day. Now in accounting, normally we don't pay much attention to the clear date. We really pay attention to the original check date, for example. However, when we go reconcile, the clear date is really valuable to know, for example, where in your financial statement, on your bank statement, if you have 10, 20 pages worth of bank statements, try to figure out where it is so we can match it up. So it's really, really useful to have both an original transaction date and a clear date. Let's go into QuickBooks Online so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I want to click on banking first. This only really works if you actually link the bank and download the transactions from the bank and you match them against an existing transaction that is already in QuickBooks. So when I clicked on banking and I'm scrolling down and looking at the transactions that are there, I'm going to look at one in particular. For example, you see this transaction dated August 17, 2017 for a rental that is being matched with a check written on July 1st. So in my internal accounting records, the original transaction date is July 1st, but it actually cleared the bank a month later, a month and a half later. Now that's okay, but what we want to have is access to both of those pieces of information, the original check date and the clear date. So up to the last couple months when they added this new update, we didn't have this information and now we do. Let me show you exactly what I mean when we go reconcile. So I'm actually going to click on match and I'm going to match that transaction because I'm basically letting QuickBooks know that what downloaded through the bank matches something else that was already in my books. I'm going to click match a bunch of times here just for the heck of it, just so I can get all my July transactions inputted into the system because I'm going to go ahead and do a reconciliation. So I'm just clicking add and match here at random, but I wanted to show you that particular example because that one's going to come up when we go do a reconciliation. So now let me go reconcile the bank for the month of July. So I'm going to go into the gear menu, then I'm going to click on reconcile. And I'll click on reconcile account. And then I'll say, hey, are you sure you want to do this on your own, or do you want to kind of have the system walk you through it? Just click on let's do it. Okay, now it's going to ask you basic information like, okay, what is the ending balance of this bank account and what is the ending date? So let's say, for example, I'm reading off my bank statement here, and then the ending balance is $3,700. And then I'll click on start reconciling. So when you reconcile with this new screen, let me just close all these windows here. There's a couple of interesting things here. Number one, there's this little box on the right side that allows you to collapse that and give you a little bit more real estate. You're also going to want to click on that 3 bars in the top to collapse that as well, because again, when you're reconciling, you want as much real estate as possible. Here on the little filter button on the right side, you may want to click that and choose whether or not you want to see all dates, which will include future dates after July 31st, which was the day that we chose to do the reconciliation, or do it up to statement date, which will hide all the future transactions. And that's the default option, which is great. I love that, by the way. So I'm going to click on apply, so I won't even touch that and leave that there. But what I want you to kind of turn your attention in is you're going to have a couple of transactions here, like the specific one we were talking about, in which there's going to be a transaction date for July 1st, and there's also going to be a clear date. Again, the only reason why QuickBooks knows the clear date is because we connected the bank, we downloaded, and we matched. If you match an existing QuickBooks transaction with a downloaded transaction, then this will happen. Now, all these that don't have a clear date, these are the ones that were not downloaded through the bank. For whatever reason, we didn't download them or we didn't accept them. I mean, who knows what could have happened. This little green icon on the right also lets you know whether or not there was some sort of bank interaction. So there's 2 ways to kind of know if it was downloaded or matched through the bank, it would be through the clear date or that little icon. Now, if you added the transaction brand new through the bank, that means you didn't have a previous transaction in QuickBooks matching it and you use the add feature, then you're basically going to get a clear date that matches the transaction date the same, and then there won't be any significance between those two. So that's really the really neat part about the new reconciliation feature. So what you're going to do eventually is you're going to mark all the transactions that match your bank statement here on the left column where all those little checkboxes are. You're going to mark them and match them against your bank statement. And then once you match 100% of the QuickBooks bank transactions with your bank statement, you should get a difference of 0, which at the end pretty much tells you that everything's been reconciled or cleared. Then I'm going to click on Finish Now, and then my transactions, my bank account will be reconciled. Whatever I left unchecked will not show in the reconciliation report. Now, when I click on my reconciliation history button on the right side of the Reconcile screen, I can actually now view my reconciliation report. I can view or print the reconciliation report, and then you're going to get to see the original transaction date, the type, the reference number, but you no longer see the clear date. So that particular piece of information, the clear date, that's only useful for the reconciliation function. It no longer has any meaning after that. So if you actually need to know when those transactions cleared, you have to go back to this specific reconciliation report and figure out where they landed on. Now, I do want to point out one interesting fact about the reconciled transactions and how to figure out what transaction has been reconciled or not later on in the future. I'm actually going to scroll down to that transaction that was $1,200, if you remember, and I'm going to click on that, and that's actually going to open the transaction that we were looking at, and we get to see our original transaction date, which is July 1st. But if you actually click on this little place that says Online Bank Matches, if I click on that, I get a little pop-up screen that actually tells me which bank transaction it connects with, and I can actually appreciate the difference between the clear date and the transaction date, but you don't get it on plain sight. This is actually the only way to get that clear date is by clicking on that little button. Now, if you click on the More button, so I'm going to kind of dig a little bit deeper and click on Transaction Journal. If you actually click on that, it will take you to a report that shows kind of the accounting edition of that transaction, the accounting general journal entry of that transaction. And if you're looking at it and then you click on the little gear button on the top right and you click on Show More, you can actually enable two particular columns that could be relevant. One of it is online banking and the other one is clear. So those two actually contain a specific piece of information that may not necessarily be relevant, but they could be. So I'm going to show you those two. And then I want you to kind of take a look at those two lines there in the column. See that there is online banking manually matched and then clear R. So R means it's been reconciled, and manually match means that we clicked on that match button when we were reconciling. So that's kind of a little bit of extra information you can tell from that particular transaction. All right, I hope you liked the video and learned something new from it. If you liked the video, hit like and subscribe to the channel to watch more when they come in the future. Thank you.